Welcome back to another round, Bases Picks. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, and any and all in between. Now look, there's actually quite a bit of different boxing on this week, but you know, it's a lot more low-key. Like there's a big Japanese card that's on at the moment tomorrow with the Shigeoka brothers. I won't go into that, only because I know a lot of you guys will have no knowledge or no insight or no way to watch those fights. But I do expect them to be successful, especially Jinjiro Shigeoka. Of the two, he's the one I'm expecting most to win something. Tonight, we've got the York Hall show for Queensbury on TNT Sports. Ellis Zurdo will be on the card, as well as Abdullah Masood and I think Mark Leach. So yeah, I'm going to be down there in a few hours. The weigh-ins have just taken place for Leigh versus Josh Warrington. So primarily that will be where I'm sort of sticking. And obviously we've got the Golden Boy Promotions card in the States tomorrow night, which is headlined by Zurdo Ramirez and Joe Smith Jr. So yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about, just those sort of 3 or 4 fights. But yeah, without further ado, let's kind of just get into the picks and see where we get to. So I'm going to basically add this in at the start of the UK portion of this video. Right, so I do expect Ellis Zurdo to come away with the victory. He's facing an Italian guy. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, and yeah, I didn't do the research beforehand, apologies. But this is more about Ellis Zurdo in my opinion, and he is 16-0 with 7 KOs at this time. I think his opponent is something like 20-3, but he's never been knocked out. So history will tell us, if that's the case, he's more than likely going to end up having to go the distance. But I do think that Zoro's going to have enough in the tank to go the full 12 rounds of this one, and yeah, basically take the victory. So my opinion on that one is Ellis Zurdo on points. I'll do more of an in-depth breakdown after the fight on the weekend wrap. I'll sort of do more of that, and I'll actually do my research on everything. I should at least have the guy's name to hand, but yeah, this video was done on a whim today. Let's move over to the Matchroom card. Now look, there's quite a few fights on this one, but ultimately there's only 3 fights that I'm really going to give any insight on. So first of all, obviously big up Nico Levi's and Junaid Boston, who will be on the before the bell portion. No, Junaid Boston's actually going to be starting the main portion of the card, so that's a good step up for him. He just needs to keep his chin tucked and he should be fine. Hopey Price is also on the card. I think he's on the before the bell section of this, so that'll be interesting. However, the first fight that I'm interested in when it comes to this card will be Kieran Conway versus Linus Udofia. Now, Kieran Conway is a very workmanlike fighter, very much a workhorse, has a pretty good engine, has a consistent punch rate, and has a good variation of punches. His footwork isn't the best, but he's able to kind of keep up with his opponents for the most part. The one bad thing about Kieran Conway is he just doesn't really have enough pop. He can get people's attention, he can maybe stun them briefly, but he's very lacking in the ability to actually like close the show and end the fight. So in that sense, that puts things very much in Linus Udofia's hands. Now Linus Udofia has got some great footwork. He's a very smooth fighter. His movements, you can tell that he almost moves on a rhythm. I've said that a couple times about some fighters, but with him, it's very much, you feel like he could have been a dancer like back in the day, just because everything just seems to be a perfect timing for him. And once he has his rhythm, it's very hard to get him out of it. Now, the only thing that prevents Linus Udofia from me being at the elite levels, or sort of maybe those fringe world at this point, is I feel like his concentration dips and dwindles down towards like the back half of a fight, especially as he's only gone 12 rounds once, I believe, and the time he went 12 was against Denzel Bentley, in which he lost. I think it was a split decision, but it's like he clearly gave up the 12th round, probably because it was the first time he'd been 12 and he wasn't really sure how to manage it. And there was other couple rounds where he just sort of, he tailed off in that fight in certain periods, but he can take a shot. He's got a great variety of punches. He's got a very good jab. He's very good on the inside, being able to sort of slip and ride shots when need be, or tying up when he has to. He's very, very good at mid-range, and he's pretty good as well on the outside. So with all of that, and the fact that I don't think Kieran Conway is going to have the ability to hurt him, which is ultimately the way how he gets and gains the respect from Linus Udofia, I do expect Linus Udofia to come through this fight. Probably not by a stoppage. I've got it down as a decision victory, but I think it will be a unanimous decision. I think Linus Udofia is just too skilled, too sharp. Shout out to Denzel, but yeah, just he's too slick, and I just feel like he's got too much experience for Kieran, and he's gonna sort of make that show. I think he's been in there with a slightly better level of competition overall, and I think that will tell. So yeah, the prediction is Linus Udofia to win via unanimous decision. Moving on to what I believe is going to be the chief support, which is Terry Harper versus Cecilia Brækhus. Now, this is obviously a rescheduled match that was supposed to take place initially in May on the undercard of Katie Taylor versus Chantel Cameron. I think that Cecilia Brækhus got ill on the day of the fight, and so had to pull out. And then yeah, that basically ended up coming off the card. Now, before, it was just for the WBA super welterweight light middleweight title, but now the WBO, the vacant title that Natasha Jonas left behind when she moved down to welterweight, is now also on the line. So there's more to go for, and for Cecilia, she's able to try and unify a second division. Like, she was the reigning and undisputed champion at 147 for about 10 years, maybe a bit 10-11 years, something like that. So this is a chance to move up and do another weight. But as Terry Harper said, there was a period of time, Cecilia basically said she'd retired, but she's come back out feeling like she still wants one more go. Terry Harper will tell you that she's looking for one more payday, which may be the case. She's back with Jonathan Banks now, which is better for Cecilia than when she tried to move over to Abel Ramos. Abel Sanchez, sorry. That wasn't the right choice for her, and up till now I still don't understand why she made that decision. But that being said, Jonathan Banks knows how to get the best out of her. He's been a long time trainer, and I feel that in this fight, especially in the first half of the fight, she's going to be very switched on, sort of very determined, and has got enough skills and experience to sort of edge Terry Harper up. The issue is going to be when the fight starts getting pacey, because Cecilia has lost a considerable step. Even from welterweight, she started to slow down towards the back end of her career. Obviously, we had those fights against Jessica McCaskill. She just, the speed, the same sharpness that she had prior just wasn't there. She was getting hit a lot more than she'd been hit previously in fights. Now, obviously, that's a part and parcel of Jessica McCaskill's style, but you could just see that the gears were starting to slow down, and everything was starting to just become a bit more lethargic than it was previous. So in this one, even though she, I guess, is the person that walks around at a naturally bigger weight usually, Terry Harper's gonna be the bigger girl in there. She's taller, even though she's not a naturally bigger woman, because she used to obviously boil herself down. She's grown herself into a nice frame. She doesn't even come in at the 154 limit. I think in the last fight that she was in, she came in at sort of like 149, so she's very comfortable coming in sub 150. And part of that, you know, she's not putting on size for the sake of it, so she's moving her optimal weight, she's punching at an optimal weight, and she's got enough to, if they get on the inside, that she's going to be able to hold her own. And I think all of this is just going to be a wear on the older woman's legs. I mean, Cecilia, I think, is about 42 now, or coming up to that if she's not quite there yet. You know, Terry's still in her 20s, and it's just going to be a case of the youth is going to just outweigh the experience. And even though I think Cecilia's going to stay in there and make it a competitive fight, especially in the first half, I think Terry's pretty much going to sweep the back half of the fight, and I do expect her to get a unanimous decision points victory against Cecilia Brækhus to win that vacant WBO super welterweight light middleweight title and retain her WBA version. So yeah, that's the prediction. All right, moving on to the main event now. So you've got Leigh Wood versus Josh Warrington. Now, quite frankly, I've said on numerous times, Josh Warrington doesn't deserve this fight. That's not because I can't see the money in it. It's a big money fight, and I get that for both of them. But Josh Warrington has had one win in his last 5 fights. He's won 2 fights in the last 4 years. To me, that isn't, you know, voluntary level, and it's not even like his last fight was the one that he won. No, he lost his last fight, so he's actually getting a title shot coming off of a loss, which to me is a big no-no unless you've got a rematch clause. So I have big issues with him being in this fight, especially in some of those last fights. You know, there's been a lot of complaints and, you know, mentions of obviously him being that dirty fighter, and all of a sudden start opening up cuts on people left, right and center. I mean, he went in with the head with Mauricio Lara in the second fight. He went in with the head with Kiko Martinez and opened up a cut in that fight. He went in with the head against Luis Alberto Lopez and opened up a cut due to head clashes in that one also. The thing is, he was always rough with the head before, but he was never cutting people. That's how you know that now all of a sudden it's a tactic, because before he would sort of barrel forward, but the head wasn't in play as much as it's been in play recently. But that's my disagreement with the fight over. It's going to be a massive event ultimately. Leigh Wood is the naturally bigger guy of the two. He's the one that struggles more to make the weight. Josh Warrington is a career featherweight, which does play in his advantage, but ultimately you get to those advanced ages and it gets a lot more difficult to stay in the same division you've been campaigning in. So maybe a move up for him should have been in the cards like a year ago, and the same with you know, with Leigh Wood. But let's get to how I think the fight plays out. Leigh Wood has the style to beat Josh Warrington if you're looking at just from a stylistic point of view. However, because Leigh Wood likes to operate to a game plan and almost he starts a little bit slower, Josh Warrington has the advantage in the fact that his style doesn't take ring rust or timing into account, because it's literally barrel forward, almost sit on your chest, get inside the mid-range, keep it a close range fight, and just disrupt you and disturb your rhythm with nothing but volume. And one thing about Warrington is he can throw for days. He's got a massive engine on him, and he can just work. Whereas Leigh Wood, he's got a good engine, but he manages his energy a lot better. So for Leigh Wood, he's got to be able to time Josh Warrington when he's actually coming into center position and basically try to halt his momentum in enough of a way that even if it doesn't necessarily knock Warrington out or stun him, like it makes him more cautious just to jump in. The same way how he got very tentative in the first Mauricio Lara fight. After maybe sort of the third round, he wasn't barreling forward as quickly as he was prior, because stylistically Lara is also a nightmare matchup for him, someone that fights in a similar way but just has a better chin and better punch power. So yeah, in this particular instance, like, Leigh Wood's gonna have to adjust and make this fight his fight, in terms of he's got to keep range, he's got to stop Josh Warrington from being able to swarm and flurry him by landing something clean early, just to make him a bit more cautious. Now, the first half of this fight, I don't think he's going to have the huge success with that, and I do actually think that he will get outworked a little bit in the first part of the fight, but then I'm looking towards sort of the back half of this fight. I do think he's going to start landing some of those shots, especially from about round 5-6 onwards, and in those moments where at that point he can get Warrington to slow down a little bit, just to drop the work rate slightly, he'll be able to time certain punches a lot quicker. And I think that when they start getting on the inside, Leigh Wood's natural size difference will start to wear on Josh a little bit, when he can't necessarily just get his hands and get his head on his chest and just work. And ultimately, I believe that's going to be the key to where the fight switches. And I see Leigh Wood ending up getting a stoppage in the later rounds. I'm talking between rounds 9 to 12, but if I had to put a round on it, which I did in my predictions league, I put round 11. I can see this being a very Conlan-esque type job, where you have to go through some crisis at the start of the fight, but ultimately you get through that crisis and you work, you just do some solid work. You just start taking the legs away, taking the chin away, taking the breath away, and you just close the show. And I do believe that he will get the show closed in those later rounds. So I'm going to go with an 11th round stoppage for Leigh Wood. Now we're going to move over to the Golden Boy card. Okay, so for this one, there's not going to be a huge talk of the undercard. To be honest, the only fight that is of any note to, I guess, us would be Bektemir Melikuziev, aka Bek the Bully, versus Alantez Fox. Really, really brief on that one. I think Bektemir is gonna use Alantez Fox at this point for target practice. Fox is a very tall, very rangy guy, but his punch resistance has been on the wane for, I think, the last 3 years at this point. And yeah, I think it's just going to be target practice. I don't think Beck's he's gonna rush to get Alantez Fox out of there, but ultimately I can see him drilling a straight left down to the body, and then following it up with a right hook to the head, and ultimately getting a stoppage victory by that method. And I see it happening quite early, so I'm looking at the 3rd or the 4th round for this fight to be over with. Now to the main event, you got Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez against Joe Smith Jr. Now this is being fought at cruiserweight, but a catch weight, I think, of 190 or 193 pounds, which is a bit strange because Joe Smith Jr. has never said that he wanted to move up, and Zurdo probably has to, because he either can't make the light heavyweight limit anymore, or he's just too lazy to do so. Maybe he's testing the waters, because the last time obviously he was supposed to fight Gabe Rosado, and he came in like, I think it was 7 or 8 pounds over the 175 limit, and then the fight ended up getting called off, and Gabe ended up getting a secondary opponent, I believe. So, but in this one, the way I ultimately see this, Joe Smith Jr., I feel like his best days are behind him, but he's also the guy that's always been the underdog, and every time he's been the underdog, with the exception of the Beterbiev fight, I would say he's found a way to, come out on top. And on this particular occasion, I feel like maybe the extra weight and him not having to drain down to 175 will help him as well, especially in his resistance. He's always taken a pretty good shot, apart from, again, Beterbiev, but that's just Beterbiev. No one takes Beterbiev punches all night. But yeah, on that particular occasion, I think Joe just, his resistance, I think he just broken a lot quicker than people expected. Now, I feel like this is going to be a very attritional fight. I think it would be cagey in the first couple of rounds, the first 2 rounds, maybe 3. But after that, I feel it would be very attritional, with Gilberto Ramirez trying to press forward and just use his size and his strength to almost bully Joe Smith Jr. on the inside. But Joe Smith Jr. being, again, a big, burly, working class man from those tri-state areas in America, he's just not really going to have that. So he's going to stand his ground as much as possible, and he's going to fight back, and he's not going to allow himself to be bullied. And there will be similar sizes and probably similar strength and dimensions, but with the extra activity and freshness of Ramirez, even though he's had 45 fights in his career, most of them haven't gone the distance, and he hasn't taken a huge amount of punishment in the majority of those fights. Whereas you have had, Joe, who's lost 4, and again was really brutally beaten in the Better Be a fight, even though it only lasted, I think, 2 or 3 rounds. So I do see the resistance basically starting to wear down towards the back half of the fight, but I do expect Joe to basically hang in there and make it a dogfight, and again just be attritional and get through the rounds, manage the rounds, and give a good account of himself, and make Gilberto Ramirez have to work for the victory. But I do think Gilberto will get the victory, and I am predicting it will be a unanimous decision victory. I'm expecting a 115, 113 to 116, 112 type fight. If a late knockout happens, rounds 10, 11, 12, I can kind of see it, but I do think this one goes the distance. But I think it's going to be a fun fight while that takes place. So yeah, that's my prediction. That's all I'm gonna put down for this episode of Basis Picks. Leave yours in the comments. If there's any others that you are interested in, put it in the comments, and I'll just respond with who I think is going to win that, and we can check over the weekend to see who's right, who's wrong, anything we missed, anything we maybe didn't call the correct way. But it's all in fun. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as I always say. For right now, this Basis Picks locked.